Hello, I'm Yvette Yi. I'm the CS undergraduate advisor and undergraduate program administrator. I'm so happy that we have this session today. In case in the future you have similar questions, you can always reach me and Laura. Yeah.
Wonderful. So Laura and Yvette will also answer lots of questions in the chat. We also have Hilary Tang representing the MCS Student Society here today. She might also be answering questions in the chat and talking about the Discord and various other things. So thanks for joining us, everyone. It's great. A little bit of introduction and the structure of what we're going to be talking about today. So dropping a course or not to drop, that's one of the questions, but it's not the only one. We're going to talk about credit and no credit, LWD, which is late withdrawal of a course, or SAC, S-A-C, second attempt for credit. We're going to talk about what that means and why you might be doing that at some points. Petitions, accommodations, and then we have academic offenses. That's not the nicest topic to talk about, but it's something that we should discuss briefly. Course alternatives, and then some winter courses that you might be wanting to check out. And there will also be time at the end for some Q&A. So we will have time at the end for general questions or other things that you might be asking about. But you don't have to wait until the end of the Q&A to ask questions. You can go ahead and ask anytime you want in the chat, and we will try to keep up with what you want to ask. So don't necessarily wait until the end. You can ask anytime you want as we go through each topic and talk about it. All right, so dropping a course. So there's a deadline, 16th of November, so it is coming up soon, next week. And that is why we wanted to have this info session now, just to make sure we answer whatever questions you might have. So there's no refunds, unfortunately, for courses anymore. That is a deadline much earlier in the semester that is for refunds. But Y courses, if you're taking any Y courses, there might still be a partial refund for those still available. So this deadline of 16th of November, that's for F courses, so dropping an F course. So if you decide to drop a course, that basically means you don't want to take that course anymore. You want to just delete yourself from that course, more or less, remove yourself. And it means that it disappears from your transcript. So there's no evidence of you ever trying the course and then dropping it, all that, it just disappears. It's like you didn't take the course in the first place, basically. And that's an option if you feel like it's not going as well as you thought it would, or maybe you want to focus only on the other courses. There's many different reasons for why you might want to do that. But if things are going well, then obviously, then you just keep going with your courses. There's no limit to how many times you can drop courses. So you can drop several in the same semester. You can do as many as you want throughout your university career, during your degree. So there's no limit for any of those things. Exactly. Could we take a drop course in the summer? Yeah, for sure. So if you drop your course now, then you can take it at a different time, whenever it's offered next. So you can take it in the summer, for example, if you want. Some courses are offered again in the winter semester, then you can take it again in the winter. Yeah, so exactly. You can take it anytime you want when it is offered. If you drop a course that is part of your program requirements, then you would have to take it again, right, at some point. So you should look into schedule and see when the courses might be offered and when you would have to take it again. If you drop sort of an elective course, then obviously you can choose later whether you want to take it or not. But the ones that are required, you have to take it later at some point. So you're asking more, Sophia is asking about taking the summer, the specific questions about that. We can talk about that if you want, but summer courses are often a little bit smaller than during the year. Depends on, then they do run the whole summer. So some students like taking courses in the summer. It's more relaxed. It's not you don't have maybe as many courses at the same time. But some students don't like being tied up in the summer semester, having to take courses then as well. So that's sort of personal preference. But taking a course in the summer is certainly an option if that course is being offered. So I know for sure things like Math 102, 135 is offered in the summer, 136 is offered in the summer. 132 and 134, so those the calculus ones are offered in the summer. Things like 137 and 157 are not offered in the summer. So certain ones are not offered in the summer. 223 algebra is offered in the summer. Yeah.
Maria, may I add one thing?
Yep.
Yeah. So summer courses, usually they run from May to August.
Yeah.
So just keep in mind 135 and 136, they offer at the same time. So you cannot take them both together. That's one thing.
Good point. Yeah. So 135 is offered in the summer, and also 136 is offered in the summer, but they're both in the same day and time usually. So you can't take both of them. Yeah. Okay. So Laura was answering that question. Very good. Okay. Any other questions about dropping a course? We can always go back to it later on, of course, but so someone is asking about the post. Yeah. So you can apply for posts in the second round. So even if you finish a course in the summer, which means you will have an exam in August, there is a post round that ends after the August exams. So it is possible to have a summer course and a grade in the summer and still have a count towards the post, which will then get you into post just in time for September that year. Math 1-2 is offered in the summer, usually. Yeah. We try not to make the courses more difficult in the summer. We try to make them more or less the same difficulty. I wouldn't say it's more difficult. No. Okay, I'm going to move on to what happens if you miss the drop deadline. So even if you miss a drop deadline, there are still other options. So let me move on to that, but we can always get back to other questions as well, not dropping. So if you do drop or don't drop, you decide to stay, and then maybe later on you decide that, oh, you didn't do so well on a test that was after the drop deadline, or you realize later you're not doing as well as you thought. And that's okay. There are still other options that you can think about. So we're going to talk about credit, no credit, late withdrawal, and SAC, SAC, and petitions. We'll talk about each of these in one at a time. So let's start with the credit and no credit. So the deadline is 7th of December. So that's usually the last day of classes, which is this time it's 7th of December. The deadline is different depending on if you're taking a course at St. George or Scarborough. So these deadlines are for UTM courses. So it depends on where the course is being held. But at UTM courses, it's the last day of class. So December 7th this time. And basically what credit, no credit means, it means that if you pass the course, you get a credit. And it would say on your transcript, credit or CR. And if you fail it, then it will say NCR, no credit. But it will not say anything about the actual grade that you got in that course. So if you got a 51 or you got a 91, it's the same thing. You'll both get credit or CR for that. And that's all that will say on your transcript. Something that is very important to remember here is that a credit course cannot be used for program requirements. Okay, so if you're in a program that says you have to take Math 102, for example, that means you cannot credit, no credit Math 102. You have to have an actual grade in the courses that are listed in your programs. But you can use this credit, no credit for things like breadth requirements. You can use it towards the 20 credits for graduation, for those sort of things. The good thing about it is that it has no effect on your GPA. So if you feel like you're not doing all that well, you think you might pass the course, but you're not going to get a super high grade, then doing a credit, no credit on that course could be a good option. So does not affect your GPA. But if you feel like you're unlikely to pass the course, if you feel like you're risking that maybe you're going to fail the course, then you don't want to end up with an NCR, ideally, on your transcript. So that will still see in red, usually it says NCR, no credit, that you didn't pass that course. So if you feel pretty sure that you're not going to do well, then it's better to do drop the course, or to do a late withdrawal. The other thing to mention is that there's a limit of 2 credits. So I believe that's for your entire university, all your years in total, 2.0 credits. So 4 half courses equivalent. That you can use this credit, no credit. So you have to use this so sparingly. Okay, so now let's talk about, maybe I should mention, see if there's anything in the chat here. Is there anything that I'm missing? Yvette and Laura, you have to shout out if there's something important I should talk about that hasn't. I see lots of you answering lots of questions here. That's great. Somebody was asking the difference between late withdrawal versus credit, no credit, or regular withdrawal. So let's talk about the late withdrawal. and maybe that will clear up some of those questions. So late withdrawal means basically you miss the regular drop deadline. So after the 16th of November, next week, if you miss that deadline and then afterwards realize you should have dropped it, or you would like to drop it now, you sort of change your mind, then you can do something that's called a late withdrawal. So that happens so after the regular deadline, 16th of November, and up until the late withdrawal deadline, which is December 7th. It's similar to dropping, but it does have a few important differences, because late withdrawal will appear in your transcript. So it will say that you started the course, and then it will say LWD. So it will say that you dropped the course or late withdraw the course after the regular deadline. So students or people looking at your transcript later on will see that you started it but didn't finish the course. But it will not have any effect on your GPA. You will not get a grade in the course. Instead of the spot where it usually says a grade, it will just say LWD in that spot. So it's not mean you did not pass the course, right? You did not finish it. So if you're doing this for a course that is required for your program, then you're going to have to retake it later. The limit is 3 credits. So you can only do this for 6 half courses for your degree. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
That I would like to add a scenario like between credit, non-credit, and they withdraw. So if a student do credit, non-credit, and then get a credit, pass the course, they will consider they already passed the course. So they only have one more chance to repeat the course. But if they do late withdraw, then they can still have 2 chances to pass the course.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to talk about repeating a course and rules about that as well. So that's a good point. But yeah, so late withdraw does not count as you have passed the course, whereas credit means that you passed it. Okay, repeating a course. So let's talk about rules or regulations or options regarding repeating a course. So if you decide you took a course, you felt like you didn't do as well as you thought or as well as you'd hoped, it is possible to repeat a course. However, you can only repeat it one more time, right? So you can have at most 2 times that you pass a course. If you fail a course, then you can repeat it as many times as you need until you pass it. But if you pass the course, you can only pass it one more time, right? So you can't take a course 100 times and try to increase your grade every time, right? So at most 2 passed courses. Yes.
I want to add something. So second time, if you fail a course, it's still considered second time. You cannot do it again. So it's not.
Oh, is that right? Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
The second time they failed, and that's it. They cannot do it the third time.
I see. Okay. So once you pass a course, you can only attempt it one more time.
Once, yes.
And whether you pass it or fail it, and that's it. That's your last one. Yeah. What if they withdraw during the second time? Then they can still take it again.
Yes. If they withdraw, then they didn't finish the second one, then it's okay.
Right. Okay. So as long as you did not finish the second attempt, then you can take it many times. Not that we want you to take the same course many times. This is not, recommended. But there are certain cases, maybe you want to do that. If you feel like you didn't get a high enough grade the first time, there is an option to take it one more time. And in that case, it says here, both attempts grades will show up on your transcript, right? So both of them will show up. You'll see the grade on both attempts, whether you passed or failed the second time, both of them will show up on your transcript. The second time after you pass it, the second time will be labeled an extra. So the second one is called an extra course, and it does not count in your GPA. So your first attempt still is the one that counts towards your GPA, not both of them.
Maria.
And then we're going to talk about the SAC in a second. Yeah.
Maria, I just want to quickly add, extra also means that a course doesn't count towards credit total.
Okay, so you need about 20 credits total to graduate, and an extra course does not contribute towards that. Exactly. Yeah, because you're basically taking the same course 2 times. So it doesn't count as more credits that you're getting. So why won't you maybe do this then? Well, the reason is maybe if a program that you're trying to get into, for example, requires a certain minimum grade in a certain course, then you can take one course and do it again as an extra. So that would be one reason why you would consider doing that. Okay, any other questions about this that I've we can get a value at least once or something. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's what we're going to talk about next, that it is possible to count your second attempt as in using that one for your GPA instead of the first attempt. So that's it's called SAC, or second attempt at credit. And this is exactly what somebody said in the chat right here. Basically, if you pass a course once, but you decide that you didn't get as great the grade that you wanted, you want to try it again, see if you can get a higher grade. In that case, both of them will will appear on your transcript. But if you decide to use a second attempt credit, an SAC, if you decide to use that, then only the second attempt will count towards your GPA. Okay, so this is an option that you have. There is a limit for only one credit that you can do this, so 2 half courses or 1 Y course. So 2 half credits per your entire degree, when you can choose to use this SAC on a course. And basically what it means is it takes away the first attempt from your GPA. And instead of that being on your GPA, now the second attempt will be on your GPA instead. Right? So this is different from the usual. So if you do nothing, then without the SAC, then only your first attempt, first time that you pass it, I should say, affects your GPA. But if you use the second attempt credit, then only the second attempt counts instead towards your GPA. But yeah, there's a limit to only 1 credit for your degree. There's a deadline, 7th of December. So before exams again, right? So before final exams, the last day of classes is when the deadline is. And I should mention that all failed second attempt for credit. So if suppose you take a course and you think you're going to do well, and so you use this SAC on that course, but then it turns out you fail it. In that case, it does count in your GPA, which is not great. So you don't want to have failed courses and count them towards your GPA. So if you think you're not doing well in the course, then you should not be using the SAC on that. In that case, you can drop the course, you can do a late withdrawal or credit, no credit, or something else instead is better than if you think you might fail it. Yeah, Yvette, you had something to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, this all fail SAC, it's a bit tricky for me even. Yes, if they fail it and then they say, I'm going to use the second one to count towards the GPA, but they end up fail the second one, then it's going to affect GPA. But if they didn't apply SAC, and it's not going to affect GPA because the second one will be more extra. It's a little bit tricky there.
Exactly. Yeah. So you really should only use this SAC if you think you're doing well and the second time you're taking a course. Yeah, if you feel it. So by the last day of the semester, hopefully you will know whether you're doing well or not. So you only should do it if you feel like you're doing well. If you think you're going to pass it.
Yeah, just that we mentioned before, you're using the second chance to take a course. And if you're going to fail it, then just drop and they withdraw, whatever. Don't let it stay there. Then you have one more chance to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good advice overall for any time. If you feel fairly confident you're going to fail a course, then it's better to use one of these different options as opposed to continuing and failing. Yeah. Yeah. So look at your term test marks, or your term marks, and how you were doing so far in the course during the semester. It's good. Yeah.
And the other thing is that this is very confusing. That people, when they do repeat a course, they need to do 2 things. One is they need to ask for exceptional enrollment through office or registrar to put in a course. And the second step is SAC. So if you don't do SAC, then your second mark is not going to affect your GPA. And we have a lot of examples that people didn't do both steps, especially the second step. They thought they're in the courses, second one is going to affect the GPA, but no, you have to make a decision. Only because, people can do worse in the second time. Not everybody want their second time to count. So you need to tell the office or registrar before the deadline, say, I want to use the second time to affect my CGPA. So you need to apply for SAC. That's quite important. And it's
Mhm.
a bit confusing. And the other thing I like to mention is that, so when you're repeating a course, sometimes you don't need to do the exceptional enrollment form. You can enroll in a course by yourself. That's before the marks show up. So for example, for summer courses, if the spring mark hasn't shown up yet, actually you can enroll in, say, 1 or 2 you took it in the spring, but the mark is not there yet. You can already enroll in a summer 1 or 2 by yourself. So you don't need to fill out the form. But once the form is there, then you need to request office or registrar do the exceptional enrollment form to add you to the course.
Mhm. Yeah, so this is repeating a course. It says you have to use some exceptional enrollment form to enroll again. That's just to get you in the course in the beginning. And
Yes.
then near the end, if you feel like you're
Mhm.
doing well, then you can consider applying for a SAC or using that near the end of the course if you feel like you're doing well. I should say that for the SAC thing, you have to pass your first attempt. Let's suppose you fail a course,
Yeah.
and then you take it again, and a second time maybe you pass the course, and then you're trying to see, can I get rid of that first one, get rid of that from your GPA, and you can't, right? So that if you fail a course, you get a grade, a failing grade, then that failing grade will count in your GPA. And then you try to take a course again because you want to pass it. You have to pass it. You take it again, you get a much better grade. Then that grade will also, I think, count in your GPA. But you cannot get rid of the previous failed attempt with using a SAC. You can only get rid of a first attempt if you passed it using the SAC. So you have to pass the first course and then trying it again after you passed it. That's when you can use a SAC. Yeah. Okay, very good. How are you doing, Laura? Are you keeping up with all the questions on the chat? I see you typing lots of stuff there. Anything to add?
Yes, please. I think I might be repeating a little bit of the combo of what you both said, but it bears repeating because there's been a few questions and I think folks are confused between repeating a course and SAC. So just want to reiterate what I've been trying to type is that SAC is not necessarily mandatory. And when we speak of repeating a course, it doesn't follow that one is going to request SAC. So just keep those two things separate. So when you're thinking about repeating a course, then as Maria stressed, it's really, you need to be sure that you're doing better in the second attempt, whereby you would want that one to contribute to GPA. That's when you would start thinking about submitting SAC. So just know that they're two separate entities. Yes, SAC comes after the request to repeat a course, and SAC doesn't exist on its own, but repeating a course can exist on its own. Hopefully that makes sense. SAC is an entirely optional thing. So I hope I've kind of addressed a few things that have come up. So thanks, Maria.
Yeah, that's right. The SAC is like an add-on to repeating a course. When you're repeating a course, you can choose to use it as a SAC, or you can choose to repeat a course without using SAC. So when you repeat a course with or without SAC. And if you repeat a course without SAC, that means your first attempt is being used for GPA. And the only difference if you repeat a course with SAC, it means that your second one of the two is the only one that counts in your GPA. So I think really the only difference is in your GPA, right? Everything else remains the same, whether you use SAC or not. Both of them will still show up on your transcript. Both grades will still appear in your transcript. And both of them can still be used for things like looking at your program enrollment requirements, for example, getting into post. But at the same time, regardless of whether you use SAC or not, you only get 1 credit towards the 20 credits at the end of the year, at the end of your degree. So really the only difference between repeating a course with or without SAC is for the GPA, whether you want to count the first attempt or the second attempt. And remember, there's a limit for how many times you can use SAC, right? So you should only use it 1.0 credits, so 2 H courses in total. Okay, any other questions about this? If you do bad in a summer course and you want to do, yeah, you can do that as well. I don't think you can label, draw, and use SAC at the same time. Are there things like that we should consider? I think it has to be one or the other, right?
No, I think we're conflating two different things. So LWD is simply a kind of get out of jail free drop. Sorry to use that slang, but it basically, you've missed the ACORN deadline, and now it's after November 16, pardon me, and it's before the last day of classes. And you simply do not want a record of this grade on your transcript, and that's where LWD comes in. LWD and SAC are unrelated. I don't know if Yvette wants to add anything, or Maria.
Yeah, I guess the question in the chat here is talking about, there's a limit for how many times you can use different things. There's a limit of 1 credit for SAC. There's a limit of 3 credits for LWD, for example. What if you start with the SAC and then you decide, actually, I'm going to do an LWD and I'm going to change it. I'm going to change it before this December 7th deadline. I'm going to make it into an LWD. Does that mean you get
you should get your SAC back? Yeah, I think you should, but that's a good question. We might need to clarify with the Office of the Registrar. I think something might need to be manually adjusted, but in a perfect world, you should get that half credit of SAC available back to you.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So that's one of the questions there. Great. Lots of questions about this, which is good. I'm going to move on in the slides here, but there will also be time for general Q&A at the end. So we'll answer lots more questions as we go. You can do different combinations of these. We already talked about that a little bit. So weird stuff happening when you combine different things. If you're unsure, come and ask one of us. Even after today, if you have questions, you can always ask an advisor. But we have mentioned some of them already, and we will take more questions at the Q&A. Okay.
Sorry, may I ask Yvette a question? Yvette, is 108 typically offered in summer?
Usually no. Yeah, okay. 148 for sure, but other than that, we're not sure what's going to be offered. Yeah.
So in CS is mostly 148 is the only
148
CS course
for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
That is typical. Yeah. Whereas in math courses, we have quite a few offered in the summer. You can also, if you're thinking about summer courses, you can also think about St. George summer courses, and they might have different offerings than at UTM. So that's, and they might have different timetables of when they're offered as well. Yeah.
Yes. So for CS, if you want to apply for CS major and specialist, we only accept CSE 148 H5, MAT 102 H5 at UTM. Yeah. Right. So we don't accept downtowns. We don't accept Scarborough's courses. On those 2 courses, we only accept our own. And other courses, you can check. We have a course substitution website on our departmental website. You can check on which one is equivalent to ours.
Yeah, you should put maybe put a link on that in the chat if you want. We'll get to that as well in here.
Yeah, I can do that.
Perfect. So what Yvette mentioned just now is if you're considering a CS major or specialist CS post, then you would have to take Math 102 and on the UTM campus. Yeah, not the other. But if you're taking other posts, then you can take it at any campus you want. Okay, petitions and term work considerations. So if you're having some kind of extenuating circumstances, which will have to be evaluated on an individual basis, but if something difficult happens or something that you didn't know about ahead of time or something that comes up unforeseen, then you can ask your professor, office hour, or Office of the Registrar for help in certain circumstances. So if it's regarding term work, like homeworks and tests and assignments during the semester, then the person to talk to is the course coordinator or course instructor if there's only one or a small course, but in larger course, it will be the course coordinator of that course. That is the person to talk about regarding missed term work. If you miss an exam, then this is the Office of the Registrar that deals with exams or missed exams. If you miss deadlines, like the drop deadline, credit, no credit, and so on, you might be able to ask the Office of the Registrar. Then in rare cases, it's possible that you might be able to get an exemption of certain things, but don't get your hopes up when you submit these petitions. They are on an individual basis, and they'll be looking at each of these cases if you submit them. But if you think that something exceptional has happened to you in your life, or everybody has different things that we go through, and sometimes exceptional things happen, then we do listen to those things, and you could ask and ask for a special case petition. Yeah. So here's some links to the deadlines of the various campuses. Okay, academic offenses, or AOs for short. So this is something we'd rather not talk about, but of course it is important to talk about it as well, that we're hoping that you will not commit academic offenses. It's not very good for anybody. It's certainly not good for the student that this happens to. So try to be very careful about these things. But here's a few things of academic offense and how it might affect your transcript and your other courses, and what would happen in various scenarios. So you cannot use any of these previous options that we've been talking about in the course that has an ongoing academic offense investigation. So if you have an investigation about an academic offense, you cannot drop that course, for example. You cannot no credit that course. You cannot late withdraw that course, and so on. So that means that whatever grade you get in that course, you kind of stuck with that grade, which might not be a good thing depending on how you're doing. So think about that and be very careful with those things, that you cannot drop the course, right? If you have committed an academic offense in that course. So you're stuck with having to continue with the course. There might be a mark appear on your transcript, and it might say something like, the grade in this course has been reduced due to an academic offense, something like that it might say. And it could be severe or repeated offenses. If that happens, then you can have a note in your transcript for a certain length of time. So typically they disappear after a certain time, but it's all individual cases as well. Penalties can be 0 on that assignment sometimes, or lab, or on time, or 0 on that test, or 0 on that exam if it was regarding an exam, or it can also be a 0 in the entire course. And it depends on a little bit of how severe the academic offense was, and it depends on whether it was a repeat or whether it was your first time. So typically these penalties will get worse and worse, or harsher and harsher with repeat offenses.
Mm-hmm.
But this is sort of typical things. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so if it goes to dean's office, the maximum it can be is 1 year suspension, and then when it goes to tribunal, it can be even like 3 years suspension or something like that. Yeah, you don't want to run into this because it takes a long time to resolve these cases. If the case, went up to dean's office, if the weight of the assignment is more than 10, whatever, it goes to dean's office, and it would take forever to resolve. If you want to get into a program and you have a GWR pending there, it's impossible. It would affect a lot of things. So you've got to be very, very careful about that.
Yeah, very careful. That's right. It's not worth it, even risking it, because it can be very frustrating. It can take a very long time to get resolved. And in that time, I know sometimes there are years and years that it takes to get cases resolved. Right now, they're very behind also in terms of how many cases there are to deal with at the university. So it can take a very long time to get resolved. And in that time, you're sort of slightly in limbo while you're waiting. So it can be very frustrating, and it's better to not even go there in the first place. So here are a few questions to consider. Can I drop a course if they are investigating me for an academic offense? So the answer is no. When an investigation is going on, they will say something called a GWR on your transcript. So this is a temporary holding place for that course. So the transcript, GWR, means grade withheld pending review. So reviewing your grade regarding an academic offense investigation. And while that is on your transcript, until the process is finished and the case is resolved, while this is happening, you cannot drop that course, right? You cannot use AWD, even by petition, any of those things. It's not possible. Even after, if you were committed for an academic offense, you cannot later on go back and drop that course, unfortunately. So that's something to consider, that is important. Here's the next question. If I commit an academic offense, can I still get into post? So yes, you can. It's not completely locking you out of a post. You still have to meet the same entry requirements. But let's say, suppose you got a 0 on the final exam, then then it's much less likely that you actually got the grade that you needed to get into post. So you might have to repeat that course, or you might have to, or maybe you fail the course, you have to repeat it, and so on. So you can still get into post, but you have to potentially repeat courses to get to the requirements that you need. If I have next question, if I have a GWR, can I apply for post? So yes, you can apply, but depending if you have a GWR, like an ongoing investigation, it might not be that you get into post. You can apply, sure, doesn't hurt, you might as well apply, but you might not get accepted into post while this is still ongoing. It depends on the situation. It depends on which course you might have had the GWR in, and it depends on which program or which post you're trying to apply to. But especially when it comes to type 3 programs or some of the CS programs, you might not be admitted until it's resolved. And even in some of the math ones as well, it depends on the situation. So it never hurts to apply. You might as well apply, even if you have a GWR, but it might get harder to, you might not get accepted until after it's finished. And as we said, that can take a long time to get resolved. Yeah. So ask us if you have individual questions. Okay, any more questions about GWRs or academic offenses? We're up to date, I think, in the chat. Thank you, Laura, for managing all that and answering lots of questions in the chat. I'm trying to keep an eye on it too, but there's lots of good questions here. So thank you all the students for asking lots of great questions as well. Okay, course alternatives. How do you make up for a drop course? Right, so once you've dropped the course, then the question is, how do you make up for it? What do we do instead? So you can retake the course next term. Some courses are offered in the winter term. So Math 135, for example, Math 102, a bunch of those ones are offered again in January. So you can take it again just next semester if the course is offered. You can look at the timetable already for January. Or you can take it in the summer if it's offered in the summer. And that really doesn't make much of a difference. Whether you took it in the fall or you took it in the winter or summer, it's not a huge difference. It doesn't look bad on your transcript. It doesn't look strange, nothing like that. It counts for the same value regardless. So those are easy things to consider. And if you take it, then hopefully you'll still make up time so that by September next year, you'll be more or less caught up or in the same track. You could also consider taking a course at another campus. So we talked about that already. But for certain CS programs, certain courses have to be taken at the UTM campus. So that's important to keep in mind. If you're trying to get into CS, you have to take Math 102 on our campus. What was the other course, Yvette? There was one more that has to be taken on. Was it CS 148?
148.
Yeah, 148 has to be at the UTM campus if you're trying to get into a CS post. The 137, 157, if anybody is in those calculus courses, these are not offered in the summer. So you can consider taking 135, Math 135 instead in the winter. And then you can take 136 in the summer. And so that by August, you're still back on track. Right? So that's an option. But that means you would not have 157 or 137. You would have these other courses instead, which is mostly fine. Or you can take 137 is usually offered in the summer at St. George. So that's another option, but not 157. So if you drop 157, you have to probably change one of the other courses, or you have to try it again next year. Question about OSAP. I'm not an expert on that, unfortunately. Maybe somebody can answer that. Is it possible to be kicked out of a program once you're in? So no, I think once you're in a post, once you're in a program, it's not possible to get kicked out. It is possible to get suspended from the university altogether. For example, if you commit too many academic offenses or those sort of things, or fail way too many courses. Okay, yeah, Laura already answered it, so it's great. Okay, winter courses. A few nice courses that we can consider for the winter, and there's many more, but a few that we wanted to just point out. Math 240 algebra course. If you really enjoy math and you want a somewhat challenging linear algebra type course, it's offered only in the winter term. It's not offered in the spring or the summer. So that's something to consider if you want to challenge an interesting, fun math course. We have Stats 107. It's the only first year stats course. So if you're interested in stats, this will be your first choice or your first possible option for taking a stats course, which is lots of interesting stuff there. We have CSE 240 at St. George, that is mentioned here. Counts as CSE 236 for purposes of requirements and prereqs. So if you want to do some kind of fast tracking, if you really want to get good CS exposure, you can try that. Some cool content in those courses. Lots of other courses offered in the winter, and you can see the timetable for the winter already. So have a look at that. Okay, those are all the slides, almost. We're going to have a few minutes of Q&A. I will show you the last slide too after her here. If you have more questions after today, there is that Discord. So here's that link for the Discord place again. You join the community. There's lots of other students in this Discord. So other students will have suggestions or inputs or answers to your questions. Here are a few names of people that we can talk to. There's also, you can make appointments at Ask Registrar to get the officer to register. Then we have Laura, who's here today, Yvette and myself are here today. We have the associate chairs for CS and stats that are not here this time, but you can also contact them. We have a website here with FAQs. Will we put these slides somewhere afterwards as well? Maybe we can put these on the MCS website, just post the slides also.
Yeah, and along with the recording.
Yeah, we'll post the slides next to the recording so you can look at that. But yeah, that's all the slides that we have for now. We've had lots and lots of great questions already. Are there other things that we missed? Any other questions you want to ask here? If an academic offense is resolved on the department level, maximum penalty I think will be a 0 on that assessment. So 0 on that assignment or test or whatever. But only low stakes things are resolved in the department, and only the first time, only the first offense. It won't show in the transcript. Good question. I actually don't know. Yvette, maybe you may know. If something is resolved in the department, does it still have a note in the transcript?
Okay, so it depends. If
No, departments are not, they're not allowed to add annotations.
Right? Yeah, internal note, but outside people couldn't see it. Yeah, we can see it. No,
I see.
No, there's no annotation. Departments are not allowed to annotate. It's only at the dean's office level.
Okay, so yeah, so it won't show on your transcript. When you print your transcript or whatever, it will not show up anything there. But only things that are worth less than 10%, it can be resolved in a department. So if you have a term test or something worth more than 10%, it automatically instantly goes outside of the department. Yeah, the max penalty is 0 on that particular term work. And if it's a second attempt, or sorry, second academic offense, if you've been committed of academic offense in the past, then also it will not, we cannot resolve it within the department. Then instantly it goes higher up. Yeah. And how long does it take to do a first offense low value to be processed? It can still take a very, very long time. If it's within the department, it can sometimes be a little bit quicker. So then it can be a few weeks or months or something short. But as soon as it gets outside of the department, we're looking at many, many months, even a year, I would say, or more, depending on how severe it is. Yeah. So Adam, within the department, it could be short, less than a month, but outside the department, up to a year, or yeah, some 6 months or a year. So a long time. So lots of questions about academic offenses. I'm hoping we're not planning on making academic offenses, right? Is the safest thing is to stay away from them in the first place. So Leo Sao is asking, can credit, no credit? If it's after the deadline, you cannot apply it afterwards. The deadline is the end of the term. So this time, 7th of December. Somebody saying they did bad on the first 135 midterm, and is there time to fix your mark? So yes, for sure. We do have another test coming up, right? So it depends on how well you do on the second test. It depends on how well you've done on various other assessments and assignments and all that stuff, other term work during the term. So if you do poorly on one term test, it's still possible to do well and to do better on the rest of them. When you start getting a poor mark or low mark on 2 or more term tests, then it starts to get a lot more difficult, I think. Yeah, so one bad term test, you can still get higher grades in the rest of the course and do well that way. But once you start getting many low term test marks, then it gets harder. So yeah, so guessed the answer is yes, you can still do that. Tashi, yes. Yeah, it kind of does, because the prereq for CSC 148 is CSC 108, right? So if let's suppose you take a course in this term, like CSC 108, or so I'm asking a question here, somebody in the chat. Let's suppose you and take a course this semester, 135, for example, or CSC 108, and then you're hoping to take the follow-up course in the spring. You're hoping to take CSC 148, or you're hoping to take 136 in the spring. If you then drop the course this semester, then you can no longer take the course in the following semester. If you didn't pass the prereqs in this semester, that means you have to rethink your courses for the winter semester because of the prereqs. Yeah.
I just want to add, though, that ACORN will not block a student from enrolling in a course if they're missing the prerequisite.
Right, so you can enroll, but this means that you might still be de-enrolled. We might remove you. Yeah.
Yep.
So you can enroll on ACORN. ACORN doesn't necessarily know whether you have the prereqs or not until the end, but you will not be allowed to stay in a course necessarily if you don't finish the prereqs first. Yeah. Okay, somebody's asking if you didn't plagiarize anyone else, but somebody plagiarized you or copied you without you knowing, that is still an academic offense. Letting somebody else copying you knowingly or unknowingly it still counts as an academic offense. So you do have to be very careful with your own work and protecting your own work as well, not showing it to other people, publishing in various places and sharing it. So the same rules apply, exactly the same kind of penalty, but whether you copied or was copied by somebody else, the rules are the same for both of that. So that's a good question there in the chat. I think we're nearly out of time. I think there are more places where you can get answers. So here are some of them. Yvette and Laura, did you want to mention something about other Q&As that are coming up in the next few weeks? Other
Yes.
chances to answer questions if you want.
Thank you for the reminder. So if anyone has wishes to continue engaging in this way, or you're talking to your classmates that weren't able to attend this session, Yvette and I are doing an informal drop-in Zoom chat tomorrow at 1 o'clock. So the focus is still the same. There's not going to be any, Maria unfortunately will not be with us. It's just 2 of us staff from the department, and there's no presentation. So we'll be happy to answer questions about policy, deadlines, managing your courses right now. So we'll be sending some information about that a little later today.
Yeah, so there's one happening tomorrow. There might be other ones later, who knows, but one tomorrow that you can ask questions if you didn't get a chance to ask a question today. But thank you so much for coming, everyone. We might stay for another couple of minutes if you have any more questions, but thank you so much, everyone. It's great to see you here. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone. I have an advising appointment. I do have to go, but nice to see you all. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Laura. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.